the two most serious problems for my system. Actually, I only discussed one of them. The two most serious problems are defending yourself against foreign governments and preventing the rights enforcement agencies from cartelizing. That if you imagine that, suppose there are only 3 rights enforcement agencies, it's going to be very tempting for them to make a deal with each other. Let's merge and turn back into a government, and then we can tax people. So how well my system works is going to partly depend on whether there are 3 or 100. If you end, and that is really an economic outcome as in any industry. And if you end up with a very small number, I'd be worried about stability. If you end up with a large number, I wouldn't. So I think those are the 2 main worries. As I say, if you look at my book, Machinery of Freedom, I discuss some of these problems in some detail.
Actually, this was the thing that I wanted to ask you next about the antitrust phenomenon. You know,
I don't think I'm not worried about monopoly in anything other than rights enforcement. That is, I think if you look at it, that there was the sort of the common idea that competition led to monopoly. There's a line of Orwell's that the trouble with competitions is that somebody wins them. And Orwell was an admirable man and a good writer, but he was not a competent economist, and that is very clear if you read him. And if you look at ordinary market situations, once in a while you have a natural monopoly due to the fact that in some area a big firm can produce cheaper than small firms. In most areas, you don't have that. In most areas, what happens is that as the firm gets bigger, for a while it gets more efficient because it can take advantage of mass production. Once it's taking advantage of mass production, however, if it gets bigger than that, there are more layers of organization between the president and the factory floor. That makes it harder for the president to make sure the people on the factory floor are doing what he wants them to do. And you then get less efficient. So if you look, U.S. Steel was formed early in the 20th century by J.P. Morgan, I think, buying out Carnegie and some other people and joining all the steel firms. And I don't know what it is now. Maybe it's 10% of the market. I'd have to look it up, but it's a fairly small fraction of the market because it turned out that a really big steel firm worked a little bit less well than smaller steel firms and gradually lost market share. And similarly, I really don't think that.
What about the big tech as we are seeing it now? Let's say that we are faced with a situation of state capture. Wouldn't the collateral damage of such a thing would be like huge?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean. That is the
big tech firms, they become so big and so influential, and they buy all the congressmen and all the legislature.
In my system, there isn't going to be any congressmen or legislators. You're giving an argument against the present system, not against what I'm proposing.
The present system.
But
how would you ensure that such a system doesn't develop or that you don't have one centralized body to act if necessary against such situations?
I don't understand. It seems to me that it's the existence of a government with power to act that creates the problem you're describing.
Okay.
That if you look at sort of actual antitrust, quite a lot of it is based on bad economics, and at least a good deal of it may encourage monopoly, because if you have there's this theory of predatory pricing, which consists of not actually reading the transcript of the Standard Oil monopoly hearings, but just reading what historians who haven't read it say about it, where the idea is that the way you get a monopoly is to sell at a loss in order to drive other companies out. Turns out that's not, in fact, what Standard Oil ever did. There's one bit in the hearings where someone from Standard threatens to do it if the small firm won't stop expanding, and the president of the small firm testifies, basically, I told him to go to hell and I never saw him again. But that's from McGee's article on Standard Oil, the myth of predatory pricing. But one result is that if a firm wants to break into a market by selling cheaply, it's at risk that the people already in the market will accuse them of predatory pricing and use antitrust law to prevent competition. Yeah. So I don't think you really need antitrust law. Now, it's useful that in our present system, you don't enforce cartel agreements, because that makes cartelizing harder if you can't enforce it, because The problem with a cartel from the member's standpoint is that each member has an incentive to cheat on the cartel in order to sell more. So it's if there are only 2 firms, that may not be a problem, but if there are 10, it gets very hard. So anyway, I guess I don't see those really as problems.